Ling Yuyan died on the day of Xiao Yanmo's Xiaodengke. She married Xiao Yanmo for 10 years, compromised for most of her life, and was eventually kicked out of the house. Everyone laughed at her as a concubine. After being abandoned, she suffered from an incurable illness. While struggling, she wanted to see him for the last time. In front of the count's mansion, he ruthlessly drove her away. She regretted and said, "Xiao Yanmo, if I could start over, I wouldn't love you anymore." When she was reborn and returned to Jiji, she swore not to repeat the same mistakes in her life and to desperately escape everything about him. Chapter 1. Rebirth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the cold winter season, heavy snow falls one after another. On the small path connecting the north and south of the Loyalty Earl's mansion, Ling Yuyan gathered her pink cloud brocade cloak. Chunhua followed on the side and whispered, "Miss, I heard from Sister Wanner that Sir and Aunt Zhang will choose your husband's family for you, and..." When mentioning Aunt Zhang, Ling Yuyan's eyes flashed with a hint of disgust. "Miss Yan, please hurry up and don't make Madam wait long." The butler Wang Pezi impatiently urged ahead, and Ling Yuyan's face darkened as she looked coldly at Wang Pezi. Outsiders say that Miss Yan is knowledgeable and polite, respects elders, and treats servants well. Mrs. Wang folded her hands in front of her and pretended to be respectful. "I don't think Miss Yan will have the same understanding as my old lady." Ling Yuyan looked up at Wang Pezi, lost in thought, and walked south with Wang Pezi. Early Summer Pavilion. Wang Pezi drew the curtain and welcomed Ling Yuyan in. "Madam, Miss Yan is here." "Yenner is here." Zhang Manmin paced forward and affectionately embraced Ling Yuyan's arm, smiling. "Hurry up, bring the lychee and give Yen's sister a taste." Ling Yuyan withdrew her hand without any trace, took a few steps back, and sat in the round chair behind her. "Auntie, if you have something to say, there's no need to pretend to be a snake to me. She and Zhang Manmin have always been at odds, so there is no need to pretend to be kind. Anyway, I'll get straight to the point. If there's anything inappropriate, I hope the young lady doesn't argue with me." Zhang Manmin smiled and twisted her waist to sit in the main seat. "What are you going to do about Brother Mo? Poochie." Ling Yuyan chuckled softly, picked up a fan to cover half of her face, and said softly, "What's wrong? Nowadays, even in the Earl's mansion, it's not possible for an aunt to be the head of the household, and we also need to take care of our affairs. It seems that I will be easily manipulated by my aunt in the future." Zhang Manmin wanted to control Ling Yuyan, but she never succeeded. Upon hearing this, she was not angry either. Business matters, so there was no need to show off her eloquence. "Miss, don't say anything falsely. Although I am a concubine, this pair of keys cannot be fake. The Count personally handed me the Count's mansion. If my brother and sister live in the mansion for a day, then I will entrust the eldest Day to take care of it as an elder." She was too lazy to argue with Ling Yuyan and went straight to the topic. "Call the eldest girl here today. Firstly, we will discuss placing several female envoys who will take care of Moge's yard. I understand that the eldest girl has always been domineering, and Moge's affairs must be taken care of by the girl." Zhang Manmin signaled to Mrs. Wang. Wang Pezi left quickly, and when she returned, she led around 10 female envoys, each young and beautiful, with obvious intentions. "Miss, this is the female envoy's brochure from Moge's yard. You still need to come and take a look." Wang Pezi handed the booklet to Ling Yuyan, who looked up at her coldly, causing Wang Pezi's scalp to tingle. What a sharp gaze! Ling Yuyan's gaze fixed on the most beautiful female envoy and she smiled. "Aunt is very interested in Big Brother. I think what Aunt has chosen is top-notch." Zhang Manmin's eyes flashed with a hint of disgust, but her face remained calm and she called out to Mrs. Wang. "You take the female envoy to the Mukan Pavilion to decorate Moge's yard." Waiting for someone to leave, Zhang Manmin looked up and down at Ling Yuyan. "In a few days, it will be the eldest girl and her hairpin ceremony, and it's also time to discuss marriage with her. If she still lives in the Mukan pavilion, she may not look like anything. She observed Ling Yuyan while speaking, and seeing that she was not angry, she bravely continued. I have agreed with my lord that Qingning Pavilion is clean and elegant, suitable for young ladies to live in. If young ladies don't mind. If you don't mind, just Qingning Pavilion, Ling Yuyan replied expressionlessly. Until now, she has been a bit dazed and unable to believe that she has been reborn. Reborn at the age of 15, in the 7th year of falling in love with his brother. Law Xiao Yanmo. In the previous life, she loved Xiao Yanmo to the bone, disregarding worldly standards, being polite, righteous, and shameless, and using life and death as a threat to force her father to agree to her marriage with Xiao Yanmo. But in exchange, her father's title was stripped and her family was destroyed, while she was tormented by illness for several years and ultimately died on a cold winter night. Thinking of the night she passed away, she could even feel the chill and instinctively gathered up her clothes. Now that Xiao Yanmo has entered the court as an official, there is no female envoy to be found in the entire courtyard, and it is not allowed to have a whole house. That is her masterpiece. In order to completely occupy Xiao Yanmo, she moved into the Mukan pavilion without authorization, dismissed all female envoys, and even drove Xiao Yanmo's childhood sweetheart to the outer village. I used to think that Xiao Yanmo loved her, otherwise how could I allow her to be arrogant and domineering? Upon closer examination, all of this was just a way to lure her into the game. At that time, Xiao Yanmo was filled with hatred towards her, winning by hiding well and never being noticed by her. The fate of her tragic death in the previous life was her own fault, but the loyalty and righteousness Count's mansion is innocent. She can die, but even if she dies, she must protect the Earl's mansion. Miss, but not satisfied. Zhang Manmin asked cautiously, afraid of offending Ling Yuyan. It would be her who would suffer in the future. On the surface, she was in charge of the whole family, with unlimited glory. Although not a countess, she could be the head of the family. In the mansion, who wouldn't respectfully call her madam? Dugu Ling Yuyan is like an outsider, reminding her of her concubine status everywhere and showing no respect for her. However, Ling Yuyan was deeply loved by the nobleman, and every time she filed a complaint, she ended up in failure. I can only watch Ling Yuyan act recklessly in the mansion. It's all up to my aunt to make decisions, Ling Yuyan continued with a smile on her face. Aunt has other matters to attend to. Let's just talk about them together so that I can save my aunt's time. Zhang Manmin awkwardly smiled and reached out to gather her scattered hair around her temples. I have always liked the straightforward temperament of a big girl. There is no pretense of being a girl, it makes people feel happy when they see it. She said this is beating around the bush and cursing her for not knowing the etiquette. Ling Yuyan sneered and looked at her with a faint smile, silently waiting for her next words. Just now, I mentioned discussing marriage with the girl. Marriage has always been a concern for the housewife, and the nobleman has always been the outer man. The old lady is getting older, so she is not as capable as me in managing it. I have agreed with the nobleman that I will be fully responsible for planning the marriage of the young lady. Don't worry, young lady. I will choose a good marriage for you, and you will not be wronged. The girl is so honored and respected in the Earl's mansion, just as she is constantly honored and favored in her husband's family. Zhang Manmin hated Ling Yuyan deeply and just wanted to send this eyesore out of the mansion as soon as possible, so as not to get in the way of the mansion. Don't be foolishly trying to dominate him, O Guer. Auntie, have you chosen a good family? Ling Yuyan spoke lightly, a chill flashing in her eyes. Upon hearing this, Zhang Manmin's eyebrows lit up with joy, and her heart was only focused on the little girl with Xiao Yanmo. She was not afraid of anything she could achieve. On the surface, she is showing off her teeth and claws, indulging and being unruly, but on the inside, she feels weak and unable to withstand any storms. She took a sip of tea and said leisurely, "My niece from my mother's family, Brother Cheng, you have seen a tall and powerful young lady, with a jade tree and a graceful demeanor. Having only served as an official in the court for 2 years, he has gained deep appreciation from the official family and has an unlimited future. If he were to ascend to the cabinet and pay homage to the Prime Minister in the future, he would definitely have unlimited glory. When it comes to Brother Cheng, the nobleman also speaks highly of him. Such a good match is not considered unfair to the young lady. Sincerely, you look like a fairy in the sky to me. After marriage, I will always be obedient to you without any hesitation. Chapter 2. Pet Concubine. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the previous life, she had heard the same words. At that time, all her thoughts were on Xiao Yanmo and she had no intention of entanglement with Zhang Manmin. In order to dispel Zhang Manmin's thoughts, gold and silver jewelry were sent to the Chu Xia pavilion like flowing water. This matter has just been abandoned. Upon closer examination, her initial goal was money, not her marriage. Everything is just their means. Ling Yuyan coldly interrupted her. When will it be my aunt's turn to worry about my marriage? If I remember correctly, my grandmother once said that my marriage had to be agreed upon between my grandmother and the elders of the Ling family, and it was not because my aunt had obtained their permission. Zhang Manmin's body stiffened and she smiled awkwardly. Miss, it's really tough now. We've agreed on things at home, but I've made a lot of money for her. It makes my aunt really uncomfortable, she said. It's just a mention of the girl's marriage, why involve the old lady in her in-laws? Who is your in-laws? Ling Yuyan scolded, her eyes tinged with a hint of displeasure. She said firmly, my father has temporarily placed my aunt in charge of the affairs of the inner house. Does my aunt feel like she is the wife of the Marquis of Pingyuan and has become the head of the household in this Marquis' mansion? Sharp words, bare facts. Zhang Manmin's expression changed as she was slapped in the face. She propped herself up and forced a smile. Thank you for reminding me, Mississippi. I am aware of my low status and dare not. I deluded myself into assuming the position of my mistress. Before the words were finished, they were interrupted. It's good if Auntie knows. Ling Yuyan didn't show any face and got up to leave. Ling Yuyan had just left with her front foot, and the sound of cracking and smashing came from the early summer pavilion with her back foot. Zhang Manmin was so angry that she trembled all over, clenching her hands into fists and cursing angrily. A powerless girl who has lost her mother unexpectedly acted recklessly in front of me and turned against her. Madam, don't be angry. We haven't gained anything at all. Wang Pezi saw that she was almost venting, and walked in with ginseng soup, flattering her. How do you say this? Anger surged towards Zhang Manmin's forehead, unable to concentrate on thinking. Nowadays, the young lady is being favored by the nobleman, and even Mo Guer has a lot of favoritism. If our marriage is in front of the Lord, we will definitely not get along well. It's better. Wang Pozi leaned forward and whispered to Zhang Manmin in a low voice. This method is exactly what I want. Zhang Manmin laughed uncontrollably. I'll write a letter to my mother's family and ask your son to come on my behalf. As she spoke, Zhang Manmin took off the jade bracelet from her hand and handed it to Mrs. Wang. A few days ago, when you married your daughter. Law, I was also busy with household affairs. I forgot to congratulate you, she said. Madam, this cannot be used. You treat me well and give me advice everywhere, and I cannot mistreat you. Upon hearing Zhang Manmin say so, Wang Pozi did not cheat either. She put away the bracelet, picked up the letter, and went to the front yard. Twilight Morning Pavilion. Ling Yuyan lay leisurely on the noble concubine's chair, closing her eyes and recuperating. The memories of the previous life kept flashing in my mind. Like nightmares. Chunhua instructed the maid to move things. For a moment, the Mukan pavilion was in disarray. Cough. The woman picked up a handkerchief to cover it, but still coughed incessantly. The man beside him furrowed his brows and felt a visible heartache. Stop it. With a roar of anger, everyone in the courtyard put down their belongings and respectfully saluted, "Young master." Upon hearing this, Ling Yuyan opened her eyes and glanced at the two of them not far away. They were truly talented, with a perfect match. The woman is like a frightened rabbit, obediently nestled in the man's arms, and the man lovingly protects it in his arms. Despite pretending not to care, the scene of their love still hurt her eyes. She closed her eyes, just in case, and covered her gaze with a fan. Simply out of sight, out of mind. The woman tugged at the corner of Xiao Yanmo's clothes and timidly said, "Big brother, it seems that third sister doesn't welcome me. I'll just go back to the village to raise her." After speaking, the woman pretended to leave and was grabbed by Xiao Yanmo's wrist. "Don't be afraid, I won't let anything happen to you." He looked at Ling Yuyan with a hint of disgust in his eyes. "She's a girl who hasn't left the cabinet yet, and she can't stir up a storm." Xiao Yanmo handed the package to the servant behind him and said, "Ling Yan, take second miss to the east wing. I have something to deal with." Ling Yan took orders and left with the woman. Undoubtedly, she was the person at the heart of Xiao Yanmo and easily achieved the place she had always wanted. If it had been before, she would have caused a scene and asked by pinting to get out of the count's mansion. Now, she just wants to live a peaceful life. Ling Yuyan was lost in thought, and suddenly Xiao Yanmo's cold and impatient voice echoed above her head. "Ling Yuyan, quickly put your things away and don't act around anymore. Big brother, I will soon have my hair tied. I don't understand why I am staying at the Muqin Xian. Today, I will move out. Please give me another half day, big brother." After finishing speaking, Ling Yuyan waved her hand towards Chunhua. Chunhua, who had received a signal, sternly urged everyone to continue their busy work. "As you please." Xiao Yanmo waved his sleeve and left, only thinking that she was unhappy when by pinting returned to the mansion and had a childish temper. Ling Yuyan had done a lot of things that used to be sour and jealous of little women. Qingning Pavilion. "Miss, Aunt Zhang is really outrageous. She's not even the countess, she's just showing off her style as the head of the household." Chunhua pulled the curtain and walked in angrily, saying with a hint of anger, "Today there was no one cleaning the small kitchen. I asked Wang Posey, but that guy, as a butler, found a useless reason to evade me. Miss, you shouldn't have responded to Aunt Zhang today. She moved out of the Muqin Pavilion and compromised today. It's uncertain that tomorrow she will be even more stubborn." Ling Yuyan burst out laughing, doting on Chunhua. "This little thing is not worth getting angry about." She closed her book and asked, "Have everything been done?" "I've never done what the girl told me properly." Chunhua sat down next to Ling Yuyan, picked up a needle and thread, and continued with the unfinished needlework. She couldn't resist her curiosity and asked, "Miss, what should I do to find old Lu? It's a waste to even ask someone to send him bedding and money." Ling Yuyan casually said, "When he stole property from the mansion back then, he was neither punished nor sold. Instead, he left the mansion safely. Don't you think there's a problem? In the previous life, when her mother passed away, her grandparents sympathized with her and did not reclaim her dowry coefficient. Instead, she inherited it and took it away when she got married. When she got married, her mother's dowry box had already been illegally taken away by Zhang Manmin. When her grandparents came to demand it, they couldn't even take out the dowry list. My mother's dowry was full of gold, silver, and jewelry, and I think Zhang Manmin has long been thinking about it. Unfortunately, she was completely focused on Xiao Yanmo, and the Yin Yan who was circling around Xiao Yanmo did not take the advice of her grandparents to heart. This allowed Zhang Manmin to take advantage of the situation, swallow her mother's dowry, and provide convenience for the future extinction of the Earl's mansion by Xiao Yanmo. "Miss, the old lady is here. She is at the small restaurant with the Lord. Please come over, Mississippi." Zhang's mother drew the curtain and walked in, saying as she picked up her comb, carefully grooming Ling Yuyan. Chapter 3. Mrs. Zhang's rectification of her inn. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A mess hall. When Ling Yuyan arrived, everyone was sitting upright, and anger filled the air. Grandmother, father is well. Ling Yuyan bowed slightly. Mr. Zhang changed his previous anger and waved at Ling Yuyan with a smile on his face. Good girl, come to my side and let my grandmother have a good look. She happily grasped Ling Yuyan's slender hands and glanced at the obedient Bai standing not far away. I heard that Miss Bai is feeling unwell and has been living in Zhuangzi for a long time. How come she has time to come to the mansion as a guest today? The detached attitude and explicit warning made by Pinting's already sickly fair face even more pale. Grandmother, Zhuangzi couldn't compare to the meticulous care at home outside. Father also had the intention to let his second and third sisters go to Yu Taishi's Confucian Academy. Before Xiao Yanmo could finish speaking, old lady Zhang snorted coldly, it's hard to say that I've been away for too long, and I don't know that besides Yenner, there are also second and third girls in the Count's mansion. Upon hearing this, Bai Pinting's face was completely devoid of blood. She gritted her lips tightly and was too timid to speak. Grandmother. Xiao Yanmo was about to speak when his mother interrupted him. Madam, if you have poor health and bones, don't get angry, Su Mama whispered. The nobleman has already recorded the genealogy of the White Lady, and now she is also the second daughter of the Earl's mansion. In terms of seniority, our Yen girl is the youngest, isn't she just the third girl? Bastard thing. Mr. Zhang's face changed greatly, and with a wave of his big hand, the teacup in front of him fell off, making a piercing sound. She frowned and looked at Ling Jifeng with displeasure. With a cold eye, she said, when will the wild girl from the Tsiyu courtyard also enter the lintel of my Count's mansion? Grandmother, although Ting'er comes from a low background, her value lies in her knowledge, wisdom, gentleness, and wisdom. Xiao Yanmo's words made Mrs. Zhang very dissatisfied. There are all knowledgeable and rational women in this world, so it's hard not to enter the Count's mansion and become a girl. Mother, Miss Ting has entered the family tree. Once she enters the Count's mansion, don't worry about it anymore. It's not worth hurting her body for such a small matter. Ling Jifeng is not unaware of Mrs. Zhang's thoughts, but Ling Yuyan and Xiao Yanmo are both his children. Even if Ling Yuyan is not his biological child, they cannot be together. If it weren't for Ling Yuyan's infatuation with Xiao Yanmo, how could he agree to let Bai Pinting enter the Earl's gate? I hope that the appearance of Bai Pinting can help Ling Yuyan recognize the current situation and stop her from the cliff in a timely manner. Nonsense. Mrs. Zhang's words were interrupted by Ling Yuyan. Grandmother, you must have been tired from running around all the way, that's why you're so restless. Watching the situation become increasingly outrageous, Ling Yuyan is afraid that Bai Pinting will be expelled from the Count's mansion without persuading her. Take advantage of Mrs. Zhang's strong anger and complete her big plan. She picked up the bird's nest on the table and whispered softly, Grandmother, this is a top-notch golden swiftlet. You must taste it carefully and not waste Aunt Zhang's mind. No matter how much effort is put into it, it's all the butler's concern. Zhang Manmin is rarely humble. She knows in her heart that this is not a top-tier golden swallow. Thinking that the old lady has lived in Zhuangzi for a long time, where has she ever eaten good food? Using some inferior bird's nest can also deceive her. To be on the safe side, she must remove herself completely. Mr. Zhang nodded in satisfaction, and as he entered the bird's nest, his smile stiffened on his face. Zhang Manmin felt a thud in her heart, muttering inwardly that it was not good. In the next moment, Mrs. Zhang angrily placed the bowl on the table and said displeased, the Earl's mansion is really good now. Are you treating my old lady as dead? Zhang Manmin was so scared that her legs became weak and she immediately knelt down. Ling Jifeng also stood up and respectfully said, Mother, why did you say this? Feng'er, if you dislike my old lady for being old and wasting precious supplements, you can tell me openly that there's no need to deceive me with some useless food. Mrs. Zhang's tears welled up in her old age, and she began to recount the hardships of the past. I am a widow with children, and I have been bullied by people's eyes. I have never shed tears. Now that you are in a high position, Feng'er, I thought I could enjoy happiness, but I never thought. Anyway, those who have to go to the ground are not worthy of eating top notch swiftlets. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said with a hint of tears, Mom Su, load all your luggage into the car. We'll go back and forth wherever we go, so we don't have to stay and cause trouble for my count's son. Mother, why say such words? They really hurt me. Ling Yifeng quickly helped Mrs. Zhang and looked at the bird's nest on the table, suddenly realizing. He picked up the bird's nest and took a sip, smashing the bowl onto where Zhang Manmin was kneeling. Don't tell me, you don't know anything. Zhang Manmin was so frightened that she trembled. The whole government knew that Ling Yifeng was the most filial and always followed his mother's words. Not to mention food, even the old lady needs to choose the best clothes. Today she hit the muzzle of the gun, and a reprimand may be inevitable. Grandmother, father, don't get angry, Ling Yuyan said in a timely manner. Just now, Zhang Xiaoyang also said that everything was arranged by the butler, and the bird's nest was only done by the butler, and Zhang Xiaoyang was also concealed. Zhang Manmin looked at Ling Yuyan in surprise, wondering if this dead girl had such a kind heart to help her escape. In the future in contemplation, she received a scrutinizing gaze from Ling Yifeng and Mrs. Zhang, and instinctively nodded, 3 girls are right. It's all my fault for believing too much in Steward He. Come here, where are you looking for a butler? Ling Yifeng is not someone who is easily fooled. How could he have no doubt about Zhang Manmin when the incident happened? A mere butler, how dare you blatantly withhold food from the master's family? Ling Yuyan nodded at the spring flower at the door, and the spring flower quietly left. Master, the butler is here, the servant said respectfully. Follow butler He behind you. Steward He, let me ask you, the top-level golden swallow has always been used in the mansion. With a splash. Steward He knelt down, straight and unassuming. Sir, why do you say this? If you suspect that I have a lot of money, you can go check my account. He said it was obvious that he had received the news and knew that there was an accident with the bird's nest, so he used other methods to avoid answering. Ling Yuyan smiled and said, Steward He is really eloquent. Those who don't know think you are the lord of this count's mansion. Miss, you must not joke. I am just a lowly slave of the count's mansion. Thanks to the lord and mother's respect, I have obtained the position of butler. Listening to butler He chattering incessantly, Ling Yuyan interrupted in a displeased voice, Master. I remember you only came to the count's mansion after my mother passed away. I can't believe you still needed my mother's help. With these words, success made housekeeper He sweat profusely. Mr. Zhang pulled his face and angrily rebuked, You bastard, the rules are getting worse and worse. She looked sharply at Zhang Manmin and said, When you were in power as a butler, it was these servants who spoke nonsense and acted recklessly. Mother is seriously ill. Zhang Manmin dared to speak up and was scolded harshly by Mrs. Zhang, Stop talking, there are no rules like this. Su Mama, please teach her. Mom Su received the order and walked up to Zhang Manmin. With a loud bang. Zhang Manmin's right face suddenly turned red and swollen. Ling Yifeng wanted to step forward to stop him, but was stared back by Zhang Laofu and obediently stood on one side. Chapter 4. Obtaining Housekeeping Rights. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since childhood, Su Mama has been following Zhang Laofu's side. When the Zhang family was in decline, she witnessed Zhang Laofu's resilience and endurance. When she was in glory, she also knew Zhang Laofu's ruthless methods. Mrs. Zhang has only lived for her son in her lifetime, and anyone who obstructs Ling Yifeng's career will never show mercy. Unexpectedly, Zhang Manmin took advantage of the old lady's visit to Zhuangzi for rest and used Xiao Tuada in the backyard to make the earl's mansion a mess. How could Zhang Laofu tolerate it? Naturally, he seized the opportunity to erupt. Even a small matter today can pierce through the sky. She scolded, Miss Zhang, as a concubine, you were not qualified to take charge of the Earl's mansion. With the favor of the Lord, you have temporarily gained the power of household management. You should abide by your duties, be cautious, and take good care of the things in the mansion, so as not to cause trouble to the Lord. You shouldn't take Xiao Tua as a big shot and let the lowly slaves in the mansion behave recklessly. Do you have any complaints about punishing you? I dare not. Zhang Manmin was extremely scared, covering her face and shaking her head in tears. That little girl, please stand by and listen to the training, said Su Mama disdainfully. Wang Pezi stepped forward to help Zhang Manmin, but was glared back by Su Mama. She obediently stood aside to avoid getting into trouble. As Zhang Lao Fu looked at the sound of the beating, he said humanely, Steward why does the top-level golden swallow's nest turn into a second-class bird's nest? Just be honest and tell me. If there is any concealment, don't blame the old lady for not remembering the old feelings. A blatant threat. Zhang Manmin, who was scared to get up, immediately knelt down and dared not move. Steward, he was even more frightened and trembling, despite the old lady's usually kind and amiable demeanor, as well as her ruthless methods. But he is not a clay figure, he cannot be manipulated by anyone. He quickly smiled and said, Madam Mingjian, the old servant has always been loyal and devoted. There is an account book for purchasing any item. How can I covet the Earl's mansion at will? That time waiting for bird's nest was for Changa's wet nurses to nourish their bodies, and they would make it for dinner every day. I'm afraid the kitchen was busy today, so I took the wrong one. If the old lady still doesn't believe it, then the old servant voluntarily resigns. A sincere and heartfelt remark made Mr. Zhang's eyebrows relax a lot. He Guang, you shameless and despicable person, how could you deceive your master like this? You really should be tied up and sent to the government for disposal. As he spoke, a figure quickly ran towards He Guang, tightly gripping his neck with both hands. His eyes turned red with ferocity and he said, Choke you, let your dog wrongly accuse me. Help. Help. Life, watching He Guang's breath weaken, Ling Yuyan became a little anxious. The main person cannot die yet as the main matter has not been taken care of. Without considering anything else, she quickly stepped forward to pull Lao Lu's head apart. Little did she know that old Lu had made a desperate move, it was not something that a girl like her could pull. Perhaps annoyed by Ling Yuyan's pull, old Lu suddenly raised his arm forcefully. Ling Yuyan didn't have time to react and her body was unstable, swaying and falling towards the ground. She obediently closed her eyes. For a long time, I didn't wait for the pain to hit, and the familiar fragrant mint flavor hit. She suddenly opened her eyes and met the scrutinizing gaze of Xiao Yanmo. Thank you, big brother. She stabilized her figure and withdrew from Xiao Yanmo's embrace. The attitude of alienation was obvious, and Xiao Yanmo frowned with displeasure. The soft touch in his arms suddenly left, causing Xiao Yanmo to feel lost in his heart, as if he had lost a treasure. Stay away, don't hurt you. He stared at Ling Yuyan, making sure she had arrived at a safe area, and then strode forward to pick up old Lu's head. Old Lu knelt on the ground, crying bitterly. Madam, sir, please make the decision for the old man. I am living a miserable life and have been wrongly accused to death. I can only break my teeth and swallow blood. Old Lu, despite any grievances, my loyalty and righteousness Earl's mansion is not high, so I have more than enough to make decisions for you. Mrs. Zhang was the first to realize whether she had been accustomed to seeing women in large gatherings. Madam, the old servant has been working diligently in the Earl's mansion for decades, occasionally making small mistakes, but never causing a catastrophic disaster. But it's not just this lowly person who splashes dirty water on the old servant, says I stole Chang Ji's food, and even says I. The remaining words are difficult for even the suffering old Lu Tu to speak of. Mother, when Chang Guer's wet nurse said she was arguing with old Lu Tu about changing food, she was taken lightly by old Lu Tu. I also found Chang Guer's replaced food in old Lu Tu's room, and both personal and physical evidence were available. My son then drove old Lu Tu out of the mansion. Ling Jifeng explained that his gaze towards old Lu was full of disgust. This kind of person with dirty hands is already kind enough not to be sent to the government for investigation. Old Lu, you not only don't know how to be grateful, but also sneak into the Earl's mansion to seek justice painlessly. You really don't know how to live or die. Madame Mingcha, the old servant, is always dedicated to his work. Chang Guer's food was framed by butler He. Old Lu had a headache and cried, wishing he could hit him to death to prove his innocence. But he can't do this, even for Ling San's sake, he has to bring down He Guang. He had a firm gaze and handed a letter and account book to Su's mother. The old slave was driven out of the mansion, feeling unwilling. He tracked He Guang day and night, and he did everything without any leakage, but I also found the loophole. That was He Guang's private account, where he embezzled the silver and money of the servants in the mansion, used food to make good purchases, and even sold the jewelry in the mansion. All the remaining money fell into his pocket, and the letter contained the items He Guang sold. Chang Guer's wet nurse is He Guang's old friend, and the two often replace the top-quality golden swallow's nest with second-class swallow's nest. Due to Zhang Xiaonyang's constant deception, they have not tasted the difference for many years. This has made this pair of adulterers and prostitutes even more rampant, framing as servants in case of trouble. Over the years, there have been not 50 or 40 slaves who died due to theft, all of which are bright red lives. The old slave was lucky enough to get his life. Even if he reluctantly did, he would expose the true face of this bastard and avenge those dead souls. Mrs. Zhang vaguely sensed that the matter was related to He Guang, and it was feared that Zhang Manmin could not escape the connection, but she did not expect it to be so dark. What is the difference between framing and neglecting human life? This matter cannot be put on the agenda. If it is strictly investigated, it doesn't matter if it involves Zhang Manmin, but if it involves the reputation of the Earl's mansion, it is a different matter. She was furious and said, "Someone, lock up He Guang and strictly guard him. If he runs away, you will all lose your heads." From now on, the steward's authority will be handed over to Yenner, and the entire affairs of the mansion will be handed over to Yenner. Mrs. Zhang waved at Ling Yuyan and said, "Yenner will have a heavy burden in the future, so I'm afraid she will work harder." "Tell Grandma, are you afraid?" Ling Jifeng spoke up first and said, "Mother, it's probably not appropriate to let Yenner take care of the house. Yenner is young and will get married in the future. If Yenner is not allowed to be the housekeeper, is it possible to continue to harm the Earl's mansion with Zhang Xiaonyang?" Mrs. Zhang scolded, "Zhang Xiaonyang is unable to manage the servants, her accounts are unclear, and she is not competent as a housekeeper. It is reasonable to hand over the housekeeper's power. Yenner will come to her husband's house in the future. If she doesn't know how to manage her finances, she will also be laughed at by others. It concerns the face of the Earl's mansion and cannot be underestimated." Ling Jifeng was scolded and left speechless, so he had to respectfully say, "Everything is up to his mother." He could see that his mother was determined to cut off Zhang Manmin's position as butler. If he were to obstruct him, he would probably provoke his mother to take action against Zhang Manmin. Now that he has been promoted to a higher rank and holds a high status, his mother's hard work will not hinder his future and ruin the reputation of the Earl's mansion. Chapter 5. Before the Wolf, After the Tiger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Muyin Pavilion. Mrs. Zhang sat down with the help of Mrs. Su and looked coldly at her son, who was not in good spirits in front of her. "In just 5 years, you have indulged Zhang Xiaonyang in ruining the Earl's mansion, really forgetting your way here." What the mother scolded was that the child was incompetent. Watching the city leave behind a vast amount of wealth, the child could only look at it but could not use it. It was really uncomfortable. Now that the child has inherited a noble title and entered the court, he needs to spend money to manage everything. With his son's salary alone, he cannot make ends meet, which is why he has a crooked mind. You're confused. Although you're a burden, the old nobleman even gave you a dowry to save face. You let Miss Zhang fool you at will. Do you think the Ling family will let you go? Mrs. Zhang pretended to hit Ling Jifeng, but when faced with the lone seedling, she couldn't bear to give it a hard hand. She just raised it high and gently let it go. She cautioned, the entire Earl's mansion is in your pocket, and you still care about those worthless things. The top priority is to stabilize your feet in the court and educate your children well. When Yenner leaves the house, not all the remaining property will be used by you. Don't always look at this 1 acre and 3 cents of land in front of you. Mentioning Ling Yuyan's marriage, Ling Jifeng immediately became interested. Mother, a few days ago, I met Guo Jinan. He wanted to ask to marry Yenner and was willing to offer 500,000 taels of gold, 30 shops, as well as 2 hot spring estates and horse farms in the eastern suburbs. You are such a jerk. Yenner is the legitimate daughter of the Earl's mansion, and if she is married to a merchant's family, you are not afraid of being poked on your spine by people from all over the capital, saying that you, as a father, have no conscience and are selling women for glory. Mrs. Zhang became more and more angry as she listened. She really felt that this son had been blinded by the little scumbag surnamed Zhang. How could he have done such a foolish thing otherwise? In this mansion, it is still impossible not to have her in charge of the Central Committee. She waved her hand helplessly and said, I'm very tired from the long journey at the moment. You should leave now. Since I'm back at the mansion, I'll stay for a little longer. The implication is that she personally takes charge of the affairs within the government. It's all because the child is not good, which worries the mother. Ling Jifeng bowed respectfully. The son won't disturb the mother's rest. As Ling Jifeng left, Mrs. Zhang sighed and said, Mom Su, go and pick up Brother Chang. Along the way, knock and hit Miss Zhang to avoid causing trouble for Yenner. Madam, as usual, you don't want to let Miss San get involved in the affairs of the mansion. Why don't you personally manage the household and delegate power to Miss San? Mrs. Su's words have added to Mrs. Zhang's troubles. I've been away for 5 years, and she's already become a third girl. She doesn't have any status in this mansion. Mrs. Zhang sighed and said, while I'm still alive, I'll give her more support. She will eventually master the matter of being a butler, whether it's marrying Mo Guer or marrying someone else. If she doesn't have the ability to be a butler, wouldn't she have to be constrained by others? At the end of the day, Yenner is my granddaughter, how can I favor her? It's the old slave who is foolish. Mother Su possessed herself and left. Qingning Pavilion. Ling Yuyan had just laid down to rest in her front legs when Mrs. Wang arrived with several young female envoys in her back legs. Miss San, be well. Wang Pezi casually blessed her body. Now Miss Steward, this is the key to the card and the ledger that I kept when I was in charge of the house. Zhang Xiaonyang has a heart. Could you please help Wang Mama personally go there? Ling Yuyan glanced at Chunhua, who quickly walked up to Wang Mama, took away the key to the card, and smiled, thank you very much, Wang Mama. Miss San, these 4 female envoys were originally selected by Zhang Xiaonyang for Mo Guer, but now they should also be sent by Mississippi. Following the direction of Wang Pozi's fingers, Ling Yuyan looked over. A hint of sarcasm curved around the corner of her mouth. In order to make her jealous and mischievous, Zhang Xiaonyang really put in a lot of effort, and everyone was a beautiful woman. Wang Pezi raised her eyebrows and looked like she was watching a good show. In the past, whenever Mo Guer had a beautiful female envoy by her side, Ling Yuyan was like a shrew, using all means to drive her out. I think this time is no exception. Miss Zhang is taking care of herself, Ling Yuyan said softly. Chunhua, we will select 2 female envoys from the inner courtyard to accompany them and tell them that Miss Bai is weak and sickly, and she needs careful care. We must not neglect her. Yes, Chunhua replied happily, not to mention Ling Yuyan's somewhat housekeeper-like demeanor. This arrangement is impeccable. Even if the nobleman comes, he can't make a mistake. She left Qingning Pavilion with her female envoys and headed towards Mukan Pavilion. If Miss San has nothing to do with that row, then the old servant will step down first. Wang Pezi blessed her body and asked someone to leave the ledger box in the courtyard. When Dai Chunhua returned from the Mukan Pavilion, he saw that the courtyard was filled with boxes. Upon inquiry, he became even more infuriated. She commanded the female envoy in the courtyard to carry all the boxes into the study. What are all these? Ling Yuyan put down her purple brush and asked curiously. Miss, Wang Pozi is such a cunning slave. He's really deceiving others. As she picked up the contents of the box, Chunhua couldn't help but feel angry and wanted to go up and slap Wang Pozi twice to vent her anger. She pouted and expressed her dissatisfaction. Zhang's mother closed the curtain and walked in. Miss, don't listen to Chunhua's angry words. The box is full of household account books. Zhang Xiaonyang has sent them for us to investigate. She said there will be more problems in the future, so no one can blame her. This little lady is clearly trying to make things difficult for the girl. Chunhua sat on the bun dejectedly. We don't sleep day and night for more than 10 boxes of account books. Look, we'll have to finish reading them in half a month, let alone sort them out. If she loses the dirty tent inside, it will be the girl's responsibility to hold her accountable in the future. Spring flowers chatter incessantly with their small mouths, while Ling Yuyan cries out against injustice. However, Ling Yuyan knew that this was a great opportunity. How to act, she needs to plan carefully. A commotion in the courtyard disturbed Ling Yuyan's tranquility. Before she could react, a figure walked in with a curtain, followed by 3 or 4 female envoys. Yan, my good child. The woman approached and grabbed Ling Yuyan's hands, saying gently, Auntie, I heard that you are in charge of the family, and I really can't let go. Your father is also ruthless, and all the elders in the family are here. That can make you a childless housekeeper. Look, these are the female envoys I have carefully selected, all of which are capable in my room. You can use them as much as possible. I am like a brother with your mother's sisters. You are her only thought in the world. You are just like my own daughter. How can I not feel pain and love? It was Yenner's fault that made Auntie bother so much. Ling Yuyan clenched her hands tightly. Even if her nails were stuck in the flesh, she didn't feel any pain at all. She wished she could immediately strangle her and avenge the unborn child. In her previous life, after her father's death, she married Xiao Yanmo as she wished and only became pregnant after 8 years of marriage. I thought Duyu was very close and caring for her because of her mother, until Duyu's bowl of abortion medicine completely showed her the face of this person. Duyu had long been bribed by Zhang Manmin and deliberately approached her, just to better control her. Yan, I heard that in a few days, you will go to Rulin Academy with Ting. Duyu is a quick-witted person. With just a few words of concern, she feels that her disguise is seamless. She rubbed Ling Yuyan's hands and said affectionately, Sister Yan, can you let Sister Lin go with you? You sisters are very affectionate, so we can study together and have a companion, so we won't be bored. Chapter 6. Lesser Zhang Sicheng. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Auntie, the affairs of the college are decided by my father. Big brother has used a lot of connections and won 2 spots. It's really not something I can change at will. Ling Yuyan withdrew her hand without any trace and kept a smile. Auntie, there's no need to worry. Brother Zhang has always been good with big brother, and it's always something that brother Zhang can handle with just one word. He's not up to par and can't be relied on at all, Duyu sighed. Don't worry, Auntie won't make you difficult. Naturally, there's something good to give you. She took out the account book from her sleeve and offered a treasure, saying, Yan, now that you are in charge of the family, you should seek revenge and seek justice. You cannot let that despicable and filthy person deceive you. Auntie, what does this mean? Ling Yuyan pretended to be puzzled and casually flipped through the ledger. Watching her indifferent, Du felt a thump in her heart. She gambled on the future of Sanfang and took a risk to obtain Zhang Manmin's real account book, which must be used on the cutting edge. Yenner, ask yourself, how does Auntie treat you? My aunt and my mother are like sisters. They treat me like a child of their own. Yenner is very grateful. Ling Yuyan's eyes flashed with a hint of hatred, and she always wore a harmless smile on her face. No wonder in the previous life, Zhang Manmin was willing to speak up for this illegitimate third wife in front of her father, and even covered up for her multiple times. This account book is enough to make Zhang Manmin leave the count's mansion. She set the ledger aside as if she didn't care at all. A hint of doubt flashed through Du Yu's eyes. In order to secure a bright future for her daughter, she must put in a lot of effort. Yan, my aunt has exchanged years of love and this account book for a spot in the academy. Du secretly glanced at Ling Yuyan, looking at her without any problem, and continued, Yan's sister, this is more cost-effective than buying and selling for you. Auntie's kindness is naturally cost-effective, Ling Yuyan locked the account book. Auntie, wait for good news. Okay. With a positive response, Du left happily. Chunhua walked in and whispered, Miss, the female envoys have all been sent over. Chunhua, go find the relics of your maternal grandfather and mother. If the eldest brother returns to the mansion, let him come. Ling Yuyan rubbed her temples with a headache and said helplessly, I'm afraid I'm tired today. The headache is so tight, you must get things done. Miss, I'll go handle it right away. You must be careful of your health. Chunhua saw Zhang's mother walking in with a supplement and muttered, Mom is here at the right time. The girl is saying she has a headache. Hurry up and let the girl drink the supplement to rest for a while. Look at what you look like, be more stable when taking care of the girl. Zhang's mother scolded Chunhua and brought the bird's nest to Ling Yuyan, caring, Miss, you're not feeling well. Do you want to see Dr. Ling? No need. That's Xiao Yanmo's person, even if she's sick, she can't diagnose anything. In her previous life, she suffered severe physical losses and was unable to conceive, probably related to Ling Yunfei. She drank the bird's nest in one gulp, waved her hand at the two of them, and lay on the noblewoman's chair, taking a nap. Chunhua and Zhang's mother left together. Mom Zhang, I see that the girl has a headache. Do I want to give her a new aromatherapy? Chunhua frowned and looked worried. Zhang's mother's heart skipped a beat, didn't this girl know something? She tentatively asked, the girl's headache is probably caused by being busy with household affairs, it's not a big deal. Furthermore, incense is something that girls are used to and will not get used to. If it suddenly changes, girls may not be able to get used to it for a while. Chunhua thought for a moment and realized the same truth, so she explained it to Zhang's mother for a few words. The front foot Chunhua had just left, and the back foot Zhang's mother also left Qingning Pavilion. 3 rooms as soon as she returned to the yard, Du was guarded and went to Ling Yulin's bedroom. Mother, has the matter been settled? Ling Yulin looked at Duyu's happy expression and laughed along. Big sister agreed. I've already taken action, can she not agree? Duyu took a sip of tea and cautioned anxiously, in the future, I will call her third sister. Now, Bai Pinting is the second daughter in the mansion and the legitimate daughter of the Earl's mansion. Why is that lowly slut? Ling Yulin complained, I can't compare to that lowly girl. I was suppressed by that lowly girl in everything. If it weren't for Bai Pinting's interference, the quota for the academy would be hers. She can't let go of such a slut. Duyu glared at her and warned, she has your brother Mo as her support, so naturally she is not afraid of heaven and earth. You go to the academy to study well and don't cause trouble. Linner, once you get married, the Count's mansion will be under our control. Those who achieve great things need to be patient. Mother, I'll listen to you, Ling Yulin said obediently. The cunning that flashed through my eyes made me shudder. Qingning Pavilion. Chunhua held the box and quickly entered the room. Is everything done? Ling Yuyan nodded at her and continued, has Big Brother come back? Miss, Brother Mo is on duty today, I'm afraid he will be late. The hesitant appearance of Chunhua caught Ling Yuyan's attention. Just tell me what news you have. If even you hide from me, there won't be anyone I trust in this Count's mansion. Mississippi. Chunhua said, I heard from the sister in the courtyard of Machengshuan that even if Brother Mo comes back, he will take Miss Bai to Qingchun Tower for dinner. If Miss wants to see Brother Mo, she will go to the front yard and wait. Then go to the front yard and arrange it for you. Ling Yuyan's eyes flashed with a hint of injury. Even if she had to start over, even if she had agreed not to love Xiao Yanmo, hearing about him and by pinting would still make her sad. Perhaps they have not yet emerged from their marital status. She changed into a pink lotus cloak and thought about being in her own yard, so she didn't let the female envoy follow. She walked slowly towards the front yard. Miss Yan, I have some courtesy in this room. A familiar and disgusting voice rang out, and Ling Yuyan suddenly stopped, vigilantly looking towards the person in front of her. Zhang Sicheng. Zhang Manmin's sincere elder brother who entered the court as an official. Ling Yuyan instinctively took 2 steps back and kept a certain distance. When did Brother Cheng come to the Count's mansion? Just arrived. Zhang Sicheng's narrowed eyes rolled back and forth on Ling Yuyan. Where are you going, sister? He strode towards Ling Yuyan and reached out to touch her shoulder. Ling Yuyan was already prepared and quickly retreated. Cheng Gu'er is an outsider. Even if he comes to the Count's mansion as a guest, he should rest in the front yard and enter the inner house without reason. If his father finds out, he may not be able to avoid punishment. There is a threatening connotation in the language. I thought that if I moved out of Ling Jifeng, Zhang Sicheng would know the difficulties and retreat. Unexpectedly, this guy is so timid that he's about to open his arms and hug Ling Yuyan. Sister, I really love you so much. When I dreamt of you at midnight, you were all under me, even if it meant losing everything, I would marry you back home. If I marry you, my brother will surely cherish you like a precious treasure. Baby, come and make my brother hurt you. Chapter 7. The Provocation of the White Lotus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The shameless and vulgar words made Ling Yuyan furious. He gradually approached, and Ling Yuyan didn't have time to think much. She pulled out her hairpin and stabbed it at Zhang Sicheng's chest. Zhang Sicheng let go of his hand in pain, and Ling Yuyan saw the right moment and kicked Zhang Sicheng's life root. Zhang Sicheng covered his pants and slowly fell down. Ling Yuyan ran away, unable to resist looking back, afraid that Zhang Sicheng might catch up. Not paying attention, I bumped into a warm embrace. Smelling the familiar mint flavor, I inexplicably relaxed. Suddenly, Ling Yuyan collapsed all over, and Xiao Yanmo was quick-witted and picked her up horizontally to avoid falling. Now that the butler is in charge, we can't be petty anymore. Xiao Yanmo looked at her panicked expression and joked. He held Ling Yuyan in his arms and strode towards Qingning Pavilion. When Ling Yuyan regained her senses, they had already arrived at Qingning Pavilion. Xiao Yanmo placed her on the soft couch and reached out to help her smooth the messy hair in front of her forehead. Hurry to find me, what happened? Ling Yuyan stared at Xiao Yanmo in a daze. In her previous life, she was addicted to his gentle and considerate thoughts, treating his care for her sister as evidence of loving her. Upon closer examination, he only treated her as a matter of routine. If she could look more at Xiao Yanmo's affectionate gaze by pinting, would she still be deeply immersed in the gentle countryside he gave her? She lowered her eyes and said, Big brother, the third wife just arrived and said she's afraid I'll be bored. She wants her Lin sister to go to the academy with me. Does Yenna want her to go with you? Xiao Yanmo asked in reverse, his clear and bright black pupils staring at Ling Yuyan, as if trying to see her through. Yenner listens to Big Brother's arrangements. Ling Yuyan forced a smile. If you make Big Brother difficult, then let this matter go. It's just a companion reading, not a proper thing. Xiao Yanmo interrupted her and stroked her hair. What gift do Yenner and Jili want? This slightly provocative language, ambiguous posture, deep and bright black pupils, how can we say that she was wishful thinking from the previous life? Unfortunately, he is good at disguising and teasing her, which makes her spring heart ripple. It is precisely a young girl who is in love with spring, how can she not be moved? Even if she were to start over a lifetime, she would still be tempted by him. She understood that he was a venomous snake, and every affectionate move carried a fatal temptation, and she must stay away. Since my older brother has agreed, I will go to the third room and talk to my aunt. She quickly got up on the bed, called out Chunhua, and walked quickly towards the third room. I don't know if it's an illusion, but I always feel that after falling into the water, she always avoids him and is very reserved when interacting with him. His words and actions are not as bold and explicit as before, as if he doesn't love him anymore. Xiao Yanmo looked at her distant figure and fell into deep thought. In her mind, she rushed into his arms in panic, with a hint of displeasure flashing in her eyes. Ling Yuyan, go investigate why Miss San is panicking in the front yard. No. Beside the clear water pool. Miss, let me just go on a trip for such a small matter. Why bother working hard, Mississippi? He wasted his time alone with Brother Mo. Chunhua helped Ling Yuyan and asked. I didn't want to go to the third room, I was just looking for a reason. Ling Yuyan sighed and sat down in the pavilion by the clear water pool. Chunhua, go to the third room and have Sister Lin come with me to visit Mr. Yu's place at the end of the month. Miss, don't be in a hurry. Besides, you can't do without someone around you. I won't mind notifying the third room later. Since she fell into the water, Chunhua has been steadfast in protecting her. If Chunhua doesn't leave, how can she let Zhang Xiaonyang show off? Without removing Zhang Manmin, she can't transfer her mother's dowry. What if she takes control of the house? Her mother's dowry key is still in Zhang Manmin's hand. If you want to return the key, only one person can use it. Third sister is so elegant. Bai Pinting was not polite, sitting opposite Ling Yuyan and looking at her. Miss Bai, my girl has always loved cleanliness. If it's nothing urgent, you should go back to the Mukan Pavilion. If it gets unpleasant, Mo Gu will blame our girl. Every word and sentence of Chunhua is holding up grievances for Ling Yuyan. Every time Bai Pinting is wronged, Xiao Yanmo must double his efforts to recover from Ling Yuyan. Not to mention anything else, Xiao Yanmo has a way of handling Ling Yuyan. The entire count was unknown to everyone, and Ling Yuyan looked at Xiao Yanmo as if she were destined. Unfortunately, Xiao Yanmo is a master who does not understand how to cherish, only preferring white lotus flowers. Chunhua instinctively stood forward, separating their lines of sight. Bai Pinting said displeasedly, third sister, who doesn't know how to teach a female envoy. How will she manage a household in the future? Don't worry, Ling Yuyan smiled. Miss Bai came specifically to find me, but there's something urgent. In the previous life, Bai Pinting was responsible for her death to a certain extent, and naturally Xiao Yanmo did not hesitate to attribute this account to her. In order to avenge Bai Pinting, he designed to make outsiders mistake her for being defiled. Despite the persuasion and ridicule of outsiders, he resolutely married her. At that time, she thought it was love, but it turned out to be the beginning of his revenge. Since her rebirth, she has subconsciously avoided Bai Pinting, afraid of repeating the same mistake in the previous life and being used by others, yet completely unaware. Bai Pinting may seem innocent, but her heart is extremely poisonous. If one fails to achieve their goals, even if they sacrifice themselves, they will drag others to hell. Her tragedy in the previous life is the best proof. Before, my 3 younger sisters told me they no longer liked Brother Mo, and I still believed it to be true. Now, it seems like it's just a means of deceiving me. Bai Pingting snorted coldly and said, counting carefully, third sister also endured for 5 days. Why can't she resist today? She even threw herself in arms and hugged brother Mo in the outer courtyard. She really doesn't have the courage of a wealthy and noble woman. This is a way to seduce people, but third sister knows how to do it without a teacher. No wonder brother Cheng said you were born a seductive little fairy, even brother Mo said you were shameless and a lowly prostitute. Shut up, you're just an adopted daughter of the Earl's mansion, not even a commoner. You're actually slandering my daughter and saying shameless things about her. You should have dragged her out and let that thug kill you. Chunhua was full of energy and slapped Bai Pingting's face. The slap came too suddenly, not to mention Bai Pingting, even Ling Yuyan couldn't react in time. The crisp sound echoed in the pavilion, appearing particularly loud, not to mention the majestic spring scenery. You little slut, you actually hit me. Bai Pingting covered her face and couldn't believe it. She looked at Chunhua with cold tears and anger in her eyes. She yelled at the female envoy beside her, is it possible that you are all dead? Watching me being beaten, I just stood by and turned around and sold you. Several women were a bit scared, although she was an adopted daughter, she was also someone at the heart of Xiao Yanmo. No one dares to neglect her. The female envoy was restless, and some even reached out to hold on to Chunhua. Ling Yuyan threw the teacup to the ground and made a crisp sound, I see who dares. Chapter 8. Voluntary Punishments. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. She raised her eyes and looked coldly around the female envoys in front of her. The female envoys were too scared to move. They were afraid of Bai Pingting, and even more so of Ling Yuyan. In the end, Ling Yuyan was the legitimate daughter of the Earl's mansion. Now that she is in charge of the family, her status are even more different. Damn it, if you don't catch this lowly maid, I'll have brother Mo sell you to Gulan Yuan. Bai Pingting lost face and roared angrily. Ling Yuyan stood up leisurely, without even giving Bai Pingting a glance, and walked alone. Chunhua sneered, Miss Bai, this is the inner courtyard of the Loyalty and Righteousness Count's mansion. She deliberately bit the word, inner courtyard, not only hitting Bai Pingting, but also letting others see the situation clearly. Mo Guer is not only a young master in the mansion, but also a nobleman. The lord of this mansion doesn't care much about the affairs of the inner house. Now that my daughter is in charge of the house, it is naturally up to her to handle the affairs of the inner house. If Miss Bai is not satisfied, we can argue with the old lady. If the old lady knows that you insulted the girl so much, I see if brother Mo can still protect you. Chunhua cursed fiercely, ignoring Bai Pingting's pale face, and turned to catch up with Ling Yuyan. Qingning Pavilion, Chunhua, let everyone go outside to work. Without instructions, do not approach the main house. Ling Yuyan walked straight towards the main house, located in front of the desk. When Chunhua came in, she folded the rice paper into an envelope and handed it to Chunhua. She held Chunhua's hand tightly and said, Chunhua, you and I are the same as sisters. You are the only one who can entrust the whole Earl house. What we need to do next is to sacrifice our lives. Are you willing to do it? With a splash. Chunhua knelt down and said, despite your instructions, I will not disappoint you. My servant's life was given by the girl. If the girl wants it, she can take it any time. I have no complaints at all. These loyal words made Ling Yuyan burst into tears. In her previous life, her physical condition deteriorated day by day, and only Chunhua and Zhang's mother were by her side. Later on, Zhang's mother was forcibly taken care of by Xiao Yanmo's beloved concubine. Chunhua had a fierce temper and refused to leave her, so she ended up crashing and dying in front of the Mu Qinshan courtyard. She would rather let everyone down than let Chunhua down. Take a look and deliver this letter to Zhang Sicheng's room. This string of coral beads is in Zhang Monmin's jewelry box. Ling Yuyan worried and said, I know you can do it, but the danger is high. I hope you consider it carefully. Miss, just take a good look. Chunhua carefully placed the objects and lowered her head to inquire, Miss, do you have anything else to explain? No, go ahead. These things won't be able to be completed in a short time. Don't worry, wait for the right time is the most important. Ling Yuyan's advice cooled Chunhua's scalp. Miss, without any servants by your side, you must take care of yourself, Chunhua said solemnly, as if explaining a will. Ling Yuyan smiled and didn't say anything. After waiting for Chunhua to leave, Ling Yuyan brought in Zhang's mother. Zhang's mother, please ask the ladies to prepare their board-making items and listen to my arrangements later. Also, tell the maid outside that even if the sky falls today, we should also block Chunhua outside the Qingning pavilion. Don't worry, girl. The women outside are all loyal. Although Zhang's mother didn't know what had happened, she still gave orders. Just as Zhang's mother had finished giving her advice, Xiao Yanmo rushed in with a fierce aura all over his body. Mo Guer. Even with Zhang's mother bowing, they turned a blind eye. Xiao Yanmo rushed straight into the main house, and Zhang's mother quickly stopped him. Mo Guer, this is the girl's boudoir. Mo Guer disregards his own reputation, can he not even care about the girl's reputation at all? Get lost. Xiao Yanmo didn't have a good way of speaking, if you dare to stop me again, the 20th National Congress will serve you. Brother Mo, remember to avoid suspicion. Zhang's mother is a stubborn person, kneeling down to stop Xiao Yanmo. Someone. Big brother. Ling Yuyan pulled out the curtain and said, if you have something to say, why bother the people in our hospital? Xiao Yanmo frowned and asked, how can you tolerate the female envoy beside you beating Ting'er? The act of the villain reporting first is really something that Bai Pinding can handle with ease. Ling Yuyan glanced at the female envoy behind Xiao Yanmo and said with a smile. Before my elder brother came to question the cause and effect of the incident, did he have a thorough understanding? Since you are the female envoy around you, even the second miss of the Earl's mansion dares to bully you. Now Ting'er's face is swollen and not like what she looks like. Today, I will make this lowly maid skin and flesh split, which will also serve as a warning to others and make them remember. Xiao Yanmo's words were clearly meant for her to hear. The legitimate daughter of the Grand Count's mansion is extremely noble. She allows Xiao Yanmo to bully her at will, and anyone who looks at her feels unbelievable. Ling Yuyan was not angry either and said calmly, Big Brother has already inquired about everything. I have nothing to say, let Big Brother handle it. Miss, Chunhua has always been a thoughtful person, never. Before Zhang's mother could finish speaking, she was scolded coldly by Ling Yuyan. Stop talking, Big Brother. When will it be your turn for me to interject? Fearing that Xiao Yanmo would spread his anger onto Zhang's mother, Ling Yuyan waved her hand. The women neatly placed their canes and benches in the middle of the courtyard. Since it's the female envoy next to me who made a mistake, it's because I didn't discipline myself properly. Ling Yuyan bent down and knelt down. Big Brother, Yan Heir, please accept the punishment. A staff penalty of 20, I wonder if Big Brother can calm down. This is grilling him over the fire. At this point, Xiao Yanmo has no choice. Ling Yuyan calmly climbed onto the bench and said, Big Brother, let's take action. She closed her eyes and a cold smile came from the corner of her mouth. It's not that she doesn't have hope for him, but that what he gives is never hope. Xiao Yanmo was taken aback, she was really different. But he didn't want to touch Ling Yuyan, he just wanted to teach the female envoy a lesson and beat others. He asked with a cold face, there are thousands of servants in the mansion. You can't make any mistakes, it's all your fault. Even if you play the game, it should still be your female envoy who will be punished. If you take over the punishment, it would be cheaper for that female envoy. In the future, if the people in the mansion follow suit, wouldn't they all want you to take over? Hurry up and call out your female envoy, don't procrastinate. Big Brother, don't persuade me, unless I die. Even if I die, I won't call out Chenhua. Ling Yuyan said firmly, today either I will be punished or this matter will be abandoned. Big brother will see to it. Xiao Yanmo was infuriated by her stubbornness and waved his hand, give me a fight. Don't stop until you reach the top 20. At the end, he added a sentence. Upon hearing this, the women dared not delay. 2 women held down Ling Yuyan, while the other woman wielded a cane, her hands trembling and not daring to exert any force. After a few blows, Ling Yuyan remained silent. Xiao Yanmo suddenly complained, if you don't know how to walk with a cane, I don't mind teaching you. Miss, I offended you. The old woman muttered in a low voice, and her subordinate's strength also increased a bit. Ling Yuyan's forehead was sweating, but she still gritted her teeth and remained silent. Chapter 9. Follow the plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let me in. The voice of Chenhua rang out at the entrance of the courtyard. A few women have already received orders, how dare they let Chenhua in? They fought their lives to block Chenhua outside the door. The cane fell again and again, and the crisp sound echoed through the Qingning pavilion. Chenhua's heart was like drops of blood. Watching Ling Yuyan being beaten, apart from roaring and shouting, she was powerless. Girl, it's all my fault. I'm too impulsive. Girl, I'm a loser. You're very valuable, and it's not worth beating me. Seeing that Ling Yuyan didn't respond, she cursed at her mother.in.law, are you ruthless mother.in.law living enough? My daughter is the legitimate daughter of the Earl's mansion. If she gets skinned, the Earl will definitely skin you. Let go of the girl, stop it. No matter how she shouted, there was no response in the courtyard. She knelt down and begged the women to let her in, causing them to shake their heads one after another. Miss Chenhua, don't make things difficult for us. If you speak harshly, anyone who lets you in will be sold. You should leave, and when you are punished, you will naturally be allowed in. Chenhua suddenly understood Ling Yuyan's good intentions. It turned out that her girl was not going to abandon her, but was risking her life to protect her. If she gets beaten, it's probably not something that the top 20 can solve. Mo Gur must have taken her life to avenge Mu Qinxian. Now. The girl took her place. She fell to the ground and stared at Ling Yuyan without blinking, 10, 11, 12, 13. After more than 10 strokes, Ling Yuyan was already torn apart. Mo Gur. The woman in charge threw the cane aside, knelt down, and said in fear, Mississippi Miss fainted. Xiao Yanmo suddenly stood up, with an indelible pain in his eyes. It's fleeting. Tell your girl, this is the end of disobedience. After speaking, he brushed away, afraid that taking a slow step would make him unable to hold on to her. For some unknown reason, he felt a sense of heartache for her. Xiao Yanmo passed by Chenhua and warned, next time, you may not have such good luck. He left gracefully. Chenhua crawled up to Ling Yuyan, watching the blood seeping out of her buttocks and her pale face, crying bitterly. Don't cry, I hope you can live up to the girl's good intentions. Zhang's mother sternly said that she had no right to scold Chenhua, after all, she had already betrayed Ling Yuyan. She looked at the back of Chenhua holding Ling Yuyan into the main room, with a hint of apology and regret flashing in her eyes. After all, it was she who watched the grown child grow up, how could there be no friendship? At the thought of her husband's tragic death, she finally made up her mind and walked in with incense. Chenhua, the girl must be in extreme pain. Go and ask Dr. Ling for some top-quality gold wound medicine and painkillers. If it's convenient, let Dr. Ling come and feel the girl's pulse. Chenhua wiped her tears randomly and ran out. Zhang's mother lit incense and sat on the stool next to Ling Yuyan, holding her hand. Miss, when I get my revenge, I will definitely let you beat and scold me. Even if you let me die, I have no complaints. Ling Yuyan, who was sleeping, was very uneasy. She frowned at times, cried bitterly, and kept speaking vaguely. It's like a nightmare. Watching her little face turn red and continue to ramble, but her small hands are cold, Zhang's mother put her hand on her forehead and burst into a cold sweat. It's so hot. When Chunhua arrived at Qingning Pavilion with Ling Yunfei, Ling Yuyan fainted again. Ling Yunfei didn't dare to delay and quickly felt her pulse. At this critical moment of revenge, Ling Yuyan still has value and should not cause any trouble. He realized it was just a fever and breathed a sigh of relief. This is a golden sore medicine. Remember to apply it to your girl 3 times a day, and also take fever-reducing medicine 3 times a day. If you still have a high fever tomorrow, go find me again. Walking to the door, Ling Yunfei stopped and ordered, remember to change your girl's forehead handkerchief frequently. He left Qingning Pavilion and headed straight for Mukan Pavilion. After a day and night of careful care, Ling Yuyan finally regained her fever and woke up leisurely the next evening. She tried to move her muscles and bones, but accidentally touched the wound, causing her to gasp for breath in pain. Chunhua woke up in shock and saw Ling Yuyan wake up, crying with joy. She said angrily, "Miss, if we mention Chunhua's conviction again next time, Chunhua will go jump into the lake and not let the girl suffer this injustice." "Good Chunhua, don't be angry. My little injury is nothing." Ling Yuyan forced a smile on her face, but she didn't know that Chunhua's tears were flowing even harder. "I'll go call Mom Zhang." Chunhua wiped away her tears and walked outwards with a pretense. "Wait." Ling Yuyan stopped her and whispered, "Chunhua, I have something to tell you. Don't disturb anyone." "Mississippi." Chunhua obediently squatted down. "How long did I sleep?" Chunhua answered honestly, "Miss, your high fever hasn't subsided for a day and a night. Remember, what I'm going to say to you next, don't let the second person know." Ling Yuyan had just woken up, her body was very weak, and her speech was weak, causing a wave of heartache in Chunhua. "Miss, please rest well. Don't worry about anything else. I will handle this courtyard strictly for you." Ling Yuyan shook her head and said, "I'm afraid the news that I was knocked unconscious by hitting the board has already been transmitted to my grandmother's ears. I think today my grandmother will call you for a question, so please remember to answer according to what I said. Also, don't tell anyone the news of my waking up. When you're here, you'll be there to serve me personally. If you're not here, let Mom Zhang come, and no one else can get close to me. Next, this great play all depends on you." Chunhua nodded solemnly and said, "Don't worry, girl. This time, I will make Mu Chenxian pay a heavy price." The noisy sound outside disrupted their communication. "Mom Su, what brings you here?" Mom Wang immediately welcomed her and said with a smile. Su's mother glanced displeased at Wang's mother and said, "The girl is almost beaten to death. If she doesn't go to serve her personally, she can still laugh. Wang's mother has a good appetite." The sarcastic words were like a basin of cold water rushing over, making Mrs. Wang shiver uncontrollably. "Miss, have you woken up? The old lady asked me to invite Miss to come and ask questions." Su's mother walked straight to the main house, and Ling Yuyan quickly closed her eyes and took a nap. Chunhua welcomed her and said, "Mom Su, my girl has just passed her high fever and hasn't woken up yet. Even if she wakes up, she may be weak. It's winter and she may not be able to reach the Muyun Pavilion. I hope Mom Su can understand. I personally serve the girl, and the old lady orders me to do the same." Chunhua blessed her body. "Okay, you can replace Miss San and follow me to see the old lady." Su's mother nodded in satisfaction. Muyun Pavilion. Mom Su and Chunhua opened the curtains and went in, only to find that Xiao Yanmo and Bai Painting were already waiting. After one night, Bai Painting's right cheek was still swollen and red, indicating that Chunhua had exerted all her strength yesterday. Bai Painting saw Chunhua and instinctively hid behind Xiao Yanmo, pulling at his sleeve and whispering, "Brother Mo, I'm afraid." Chapter 10 is both a warning and a threat. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. I'm not afraid, my grandmother will definitely give you justice today. Due to the presence of the old lady and others, Xiao Yanmo could only comfort him softly. Mrs. Zhang looked at Bai Painting and then at Chunhua. Chunhua, is your girl feeling better? Old lady, the girl's high fever has just subsided and she hasn't woken up yet. She has been unable to sleep soundly and always has nightmares. Chunhua truthfully reports. Mr. Zhang breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Xiao Yanmo. Brother Mo, tell me. What heinous crime did Yenner commit? It's worth publicly punishing her in her yard. Grandmother, the third sister is not good at disciplining the female envoy, and it is also appropriate to receive some punishment. Xiao Yanmo did not feel any pain or panic, as if he was speaking of an insignificant person. Without waiting for the old lady to continue questioning, he continued, the little maid dares to attack the second daughter of the count's mansion. If it weren't for someone behind her, how could she dare to do such a heinous act? Chunhua, do you acknowledge what Brother Mo said? Mrs. Zhang said sternly, tell me more about this matter, there must be no concealment. The old lady's mirror. Chunhua tearfully revealed everything that had happened in the clear water tank, including Bai Painting's unpleasant words, all of which were spoken word for word. Mrs. Zhang looked at Bai Painting with a cold face and said, do you have something to defend yourself? Bai Painting stood up and said wrongly, grandmother, this female envoy, in order not to be sold, actually slandered me with her red mouth and white teeth. I just got the blue eye of a nobleman and became a second girl in the count's mansion. I can't express my gratitude in tears. How could I say those dirty words? Isn't it that people laugh at me and I don't know how to be grateful? As both women, I am aware of the importance of my reputation and empathize with others. I only wish that my third sister could marry into a noble family, and that the couple would live together forever. I would never dare to have any actions that would ruin my sister's reputation. Chunhua witnessed Bai Painting's strength, her mouth opening and closing, and she even denied everything she had said. At this moment, she admires Ling Yuyan and really knows Bai Painting too well. Chunhua stretched out 3 fingers and said calmly, I swear to heaven that if there is any empty words in today's words, I will let heaven strike and suffer all the pain and suffering in the world. I cannot survive, I cannot survive. She provocatively looked at Bai Painting and said, I wonder if Miss Bai dares to swear like me. I don't need to swear anything that is baseless. Bai Painting pursed her lips and lowered her eyes, tears dripping in time. Upon seeing this, Xiao Yanmo waved his hand and said, swearing is just a useless promise to deceive people. There are other witnesses involved in this matter, and my grandmother will call me up to ask and I will know. Seeing Mrs. Zhang nodding, Mrs. Su lifted the curtain and 2 women dressed up as envoys walked in. I think they had been waiting at the door for a long time, and as soon as they entered the room, they shuddered. Before they could speak, Mrs. Zhang threw the teacup onto the ground. With a loud bang. The 2 of them knelt down together, hesitant to look up for fear of offending the master. Watching you 2 face each other tightly, I believe you are the close female envoy serving Miss Bai. As for the old lady, I will pick lotus flowers. My servant collects clouds. It was by Mrs. Close female envoy. Having received the desired answer, Mr. Zhang glanced at Mrs. Su. Mother Su received a signal and walked up to Xiaoyan and Kaiyun, saying, if you enter the door of the count's mansion, you must abide by the rules of the count's mansion. Our servants in the mansion are not allowed to discuss the master's family affairs arbitrarily, lie or deceive, instigate the master to cause trouble, or collude with the master to bully the weak. If you can't remember these 4 points, our count's mansion can't afford them. Upon investigation, he immediately took the body deed and sold it, and in severe cases, he was directly executed with a cane. It has to be said that these words have had a deterrent effect. Not only did Xiaoyan and Kaiyun tremble, but even Bai Painting was afraid. Yesterday, I heard that Xiao Yanmo had taken the lead for her and made someone blame Ling Yuyan. She was extremely happy. Unexpectedly, the old lady had a seizure today. If the old lady really takes it seriously, not to mention Xiao Yanmo, it's useless even if the nobleman asks for mercy. Mrs. Zhang said, Mom Su, go to Qingning Pavilion and bring the deeds of Chunhua and these 2 female envoys. As soon as these words were spoken, Bai Pingting's face suddenly changed and she spoke timidly. Grandmother, the deeds of Kaiyun and Cailian have not yet entered the mansion, they are still with me. So their monthly allowance silver is also paid by the white girl. Su Mama challenged first. Bai Pingting bit her lips without saying anything. Silence here is better than sound. Someone, go and find both my son and Miss Zhang. How bad the management of this mansion is, it's all in chaos. Mrs. Zhang became angry and no one dared to delay. The old lady outside hurriedly ran towards the early summer pavilion. Since I am deeply committed to you, then call out. Mon Su reached out her hand and Bai Pingting obediently handed over the key. The female envoys' deeds around me are all in the box under the wardrobe in my house. Mother Su turned around and handed the key to the second-class female envoy. Furong, go to the Mukan Pavilion and get your body deed. Mrs. Zhang said sternly with a stern face, collecting clouds and lotus. Please honestly explain yesterday's incident at Qingshui Pond. If there is any lie, then find someone else to sell it. Madam, please spare your life. Kaiyun was the most timid, trembling with fear, and his body, kneeling and kowtowing, did not straighten out. The courage to pick lotus is relatively greater, but it is also limited, and at this moment, it is also trembling with fear. I wanted to follow what Bai Pingting taught me, but my mouth couldn't open. I am even more afraid of getting my body deed and exposing the situation. If they are sold out, wouldn't it be more than worth the loss? Helping Bai Pingting lie is not beneficial in itself, and it is difficult to put her future and life into it. After weighing the pros and cons, she said, I did hear that Miss Bai insulted her with vulgar language. Afterwards, I asked us to lie to my elder brother and say, picking lotus is obedient and dare not continue. Once you've opened your mouth, stop pinching. Mrs. Zhang seemed to casually fiddle with the nearby tea cup, perhaps it took a lot of effort to make tea, but now she spoke much more calmly. Miss Bai said she is someone at the top of Big Brother's heart. If we don't listen, we'll be sold to Gulan Courtyard. Nonsense, you're talking nonsense. Bai Pingting roared angrily, you bullied me and there was no one behind me. It's just that she's the legitimate daughter of the Count's mansion, so they all turned their guns to help her at this critical moment. Xiao Yanmo frowned tightly and angrily rebuked. Tinger, don't talk nonsense. What's going on? Bai Pingting tearfully asked Chu Baba, will Brother Mo scold me for her too? I see you're angry and confused. At this point, if Xiao Yanmo still doesn't understand, he might have lost his head. He stood up and bowed to the old lady with both hands, grandmother, Tinger may have been stimulated. I'll take her back now and take good care of her. Mo Guer, she is the legitimate daughter of the Earl's mansion, and even more so, my own granddaughter. After leaving such a sentence, Mrs. Zhang returned to the inner room. This sentence is both a warning and a threat.